"Mama, don't come to the wedding, you're an embarrassment," Marcus shouted. I want to be clear from the very first moment of this story. My son banned me from his wedding, and in the same breath, he expected me to pay for it, nearly $200,000. The ceremony, the reception, the honeymoon, all of it, and he wanted me to stay home. I'm Gloria Washington. I'm 65 years old. I'm a black woman, a retired nurse, a widow, and the mother of one son I raised with my whole body and whatever strength God left me each day. I want to tell this plainly, without decoration, because I need you to understand what happened before the pain gets softened by time. I had been excited about my son's wedding. Not the kind of excitement that needs cameras or dresses or centerpieces, just the quiet joy of a mother who believes she will finally sit in a front row and watch her child step into a new life. I had imagined the music, the vows, the way I might squeeze his hand afterward and whisper a prayer for him. That hope ended in one sentence. I stood there in my kitchen, the place where my life with Marcus had unfolded in ordinary miracles, and felt the excitement drain out of me like water pulled from a sink. I remember blinking, confused, certain I had misheard him. "What do you mean I shouldn't come?" I asked, my voice already unsteady. "Marcus, I'm your mother." He exhaled sharply, impatient, like I was slowing him down. "I can't do this with you right now." I stepped closer, searching his face. "Did I do something wrong?" That's when his restraint snapped. "They complained about you," he said, his voice rising. "Brielle's family. You embarrassed me." The word hit harder than the first shout. Embarrassed. He went on before I could gather myself. He told me I didn't know how to act around people like them, that I spoke out of turn, that I didn't understand how things worked in their circles. He said I lacked class. He said I made scenes. I felt my throat tighten. "I was protecting you," I said softly. "They were disrespecting you." He laughed, short and cruel. "See, that's exactly it. You always think you're protecting me, when really you're just proving you don't belong." The room tilted. Just a little. Enough to make me grab the counter. I remembered the dinner he was talking about. Brielle's father had made a joke about Marcus's upbringing, about humble beginnings and how far he'd climbed. People laughed politely. Marcus had smiled, stiff and forced. I had spoken up, not loudly, not angrily, but firmly. I said my son's beginnings were nothing to be ashamed of. I said dignity wasn't something you inherited with money. I hadn't meant to cause trouble. I meant to shield my child from being diminished in a room full of smiles. Now, that moment was being used against me. "They said you were aggressive," Marcus continued, "that you made them uncomfortable." Brielle was mortified. My eyes burned. I didn't raise my voice. "You didn't have to," he snapped. "Everything about you stands out." I felt tears gather despite myself. I hated that part, the way my body betrayed me when I was trying so hard to stand tall. "I was trying to help you," I said. "I would do it again." That's when he turned away, already reaching for his keys. Panic rose in me, sharp and sudden. I reached out and grabbed his sleeve. "Marcus, please," I said. "Don't do this. Don't shut me out." He yanked his arm back. The motion was fast, careless, angry. His arm swung, and my grip broke. I lost my balance and fell backward, my hips striking the edge of the chair before I hit the floor. The sound was ugly and loud in the quiet kitchen. For a split second, everything went still. I sat there on the floor, stunned, more by what had happened than the pain spreading through my side. Marcus stared at me, his face pale, his chest heaving. "I didn't mean," he started. But then his jaw hardened. Whatever guilt had surfaced disappeared just as quickly. "This is exactly what I mean," he said coldly. "You always make things dramatic." And then he walked out. I stayed on the floor for a long moment, my hands trembling, the humiliation sinking deeper than the ache in my body. I had worked in emergency rooms for decades. I knew the difference between an accident and something that revealed the truth of a moment. That shove wasn't meant to hurt me, but it also wasn't meant to stop. When I finally stood up, my legs were weak. I lowered myself into a chair, breathing slowly, counting like I used to teach my patients. In through the nose, out through the mouth. That was when my phone buzzed. The email subject line read, "Final invoice, wedding and honeymoon package." I opened it with numb fingers. 19,770 I stared at the number until it blurred. Venue, catering, florals, photography. A luxury honeymoon in the Maldives. At the bottom, in polite professional language that felt like mockery, primary financial contact, Gloria Washington. So this was the arrangement. I was too embarrassing to attend but perfectly acceptable to fund the entire spectacle. I sat there in silence, the kitchen clock ticking behind me, the same clock Marcus had given me with his first paycheck. The house felt suddenly unfamiliar, like I was a guest in my own life. I'm Gloria Washington, 65 years old, a black woman, a retired nurse, a widow. I raised my son alone after his father died. I worked nights, weekends, holidays. I skipped rest so he could have opportunity. I never asked for praise. I never kept score. But I did not raise him to treat his mother like this. And I did not raise him to let anyone convince him that dignity has a price tag. That night, as I lay awake with an ice pack on my hip, one truth became clear. This wasn't just about a wedding. It wasn't even just about money. Someone had taught my son to be ashamed of where he came from. And if that lesson had been learned, it could be unlearned, but not by silence. The next morning, I picked up my phone and called Damon. "I need help," I said when he answered. "My son is getting married. I'm not invited. And somehow I'm paying for everything." There was a pause. Then Damon said quietly, "Tell me everything." And that was the moment I stopped being just a mother nursing a private wound and started becoming a woman who would no longer be erased. If you felt her pain, tap like and drop your location in the comments to see who else is watching near you. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I lay there in bed, eyes fixed on the ceiling fan circling above, listening to it creak every few rotations like it had something to say but kept changing its mind. My hip throbbed from the fall. I had iced it, just like I used to tell my patients to do 20 minutes on, 20 off. But it wasn't the pain that kept me awake. It was the silence. The kind of silence that comes after a deep betrayal, when the world doesn't know yet that everything has changed. The birds still chirped, the trash trucks still rumbled down the street at dawn, but inside me, something was gone. Something that used to hum quietly, confidently, like a furnace in winter belief in my son. I moved slowly through the house the next morning, like I was walking through someone else's memories. Everything reminded me of Marcus. His childhood drawings still hung in the hallway, one of him and me at the zoo, stick figures with grins too big for their faces. His baseball glove sat in the hall closet, tucked next to my umbrella. The breakfast nook still held the faint smell of syrup from all the Saturday mornings we spent laughing over pancakes. I made a pot of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. The morning sun streamed through the blinds, striping the room with pale gold. I took the invoice I had printed the night before and laid it flat in front of me. 19,770yuan. Even typed neatly on crisp white paper, the number looked violent. I picked up a pen and started circling things. The venue alone was $60,000. The flowers were nearly $12,000. The catering lobster, filet mignon, vegan options was $24,000. The honeymoon in the Maldives took up another $40,000. The rest was scattered across photography, live music, designer attire, and branding consultations. Branding? I blinked. They were branding their wedding like it was a product, a performance, a show. And apparently, I was paying for it. I shook my head slowly. My retirement savings weren't bottomless. I'd been careful, frugal, old-fashioned. I clipped coupons, bought in bulk, canceled cable when I realized I barely watched it. All so I wouldn't be a burden, so I'd have something left for emergencies. For dignity. This wasn't dignity. This was daylight theft wrapped in silk ribbons. And still, the thing that hurt most wasn't the money. It was knowing I had been erased from the narrative but kept on as the funder. I wasn't good enough to sit in the front row, but I was apparently perfect for footing the bill. I stared at the number again. My heart beat hard behind my ribs. Then I opened the drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a manila envelope. Inside were documents from when Marcus was applying to college acceptance letters, scholarship forms, my own handwritten notes tracking every tuition payment and bookstore receipt. I had documented it all. Not because I wanted to prove something later, but because I had been proud, because it mattered to me to keep records of the sacrifices I had made to give him his shot. I laid the new invoice on top of that envelope and sat back. "You've got to see what he's become," I whispered aloud to no one. And then I heard the familiar knock. 3 short taps, always with the edge of a ring. Damon. I opened the door, and there he stood, same leather jacket, same quiet, observant eyes. He stepped inside and immediately scanned my face. "You all right?" he asked. I didn't lie. "No, but I'm here." He nodded. "Let's sit." We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same place where he used to eat cornbread with Marcus after church. He pulled a notebook from his coat pocket and clicked his pen. "Tell me everything, from the beginning." So I did. I told him about the dinner with Brielle's family, the way they spoke down to Marcus like he was some charity project they were polishing up for display. I told him how I tried to speak up, how I thought Marcus would see it for what it was. Instead, he turned that moment into proof that I was the problem. Damon listened without interrupting, scribbling now and then. When I finished, he leaned back. "They're grooming him," he said simply. "She's reshaping his image, and you don't fit the new packaging." I flinched. The words were harsh but honest. "She doesn't love him," I said quietly. "She loves what he could become with her guidance, with her family's name, and the money they think I have." Damon nodded. "So what do you want to do?" I looked out the window. A neighborhood kid was riding a bike down the street, wobbling but grinning. I remembered teaching Marcus to ride, running behind him with my arms out, terrified he'd fall. Now, he had fallen and I wasn't allowed to catch him. "I want the truth," I said. "If she's using him, I want to know. If he's being manipulated, I want him to see it. But I won't be humiliated quietly. Not again." Damon tapped his pen. "Then we start simple. I'll look into her. Social media, public records, work history, financial ties. I'll see what shakes loose." He paused. "You might not like what we find. I already don't like what I know," I said. "The truth can't hurt worse than this." He gave a slight smile, sad, understanding. "All right, let's dig." After he left, I stood at the sink washing a single coffee cup. My movements were slow, methodical, like prayer. I had spent most of my life tending to others, patients, friends, my son. I had been steady, dependable, invisible when needed, strong when necessary. But now I had to be something else. Visible, vocal, vigilant. I dried the cup, set it back on the shelf, and walked down the hallway toward Marcus's old bedroom. It looked just the same. Trophies lined the bookshelf, posters on the wall, a single dusty basketball in the corner. I sat on the edge of the bed, running my hand over the comforter. My baby boy, who once begged me not to let go of the back of his bike, had grown into a man who pushed me down and blamed me for falling. But this story wasn't over, and it sure as hell wasn't going to end with me alone in a kitchen, writing checks I couldn't afford, while being told I wasn't good enough. Not anymore. The next few days passed in a slow, aching silence. I went through my routines, but everything felt dimmer. I watered my peace lily in the window like always, but even its bright green leaves seemed to droop. I sat with my morning coffee but let it go cold. My neighborhood still buzzed with life, trash cans rolling to the curb. Mrs. Garcia calling her dog in Spanish, lawnmowers humming like distant bees, but I felt like I was walking underwater, everything muffled and delayed. Marcus didn't call. Not to check if I was okay after the fall. Not to ask about the invoice. Not even to pretend like we hadn't said the things we'd said. And I didn't call him either. On Thursday afternoon, Damon came back. He carried his laptop bag and wore a look I recognized from our younger years, the one he had when he found something people didn't want him to see. "Tell me what you've got," I said before he could even sit down. He slid into the chair across from me, opened his laptop, and turned the screen toward me. "You were right to be suspicious." There on the screen were screenshots Brielle's Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, all curated like a magazine. Perfect outfits, luxurious vacations, brunches in Manhattan. She looked like a fashion editor in some, a political insider in others, always placed beside the right people at the right parties. Every caption had a hashtag, number Grayson Legacy, number Next Gen Power, number Elevate Your Circle. "She's building a brand," Damon said, tapping one photo, "and Marcus is her latest accessory." I studied the image. Brielle posed with Marcus at a fundraiser, her hand on his chest, smile tight and polished. His face looked strange, not unhappy, just absent, like he was smiling for someone else's camera. "She's not just marrying him," I murmured. She's showcasing him. Exactly. Damon flipped to another screen. But here's where it gets worse. He showed me a string of emails, ones he'd found through public records, and a little digital sleuthing. Apparently, Brielle had been engaged once before, 3 years ago, to a young tech executive in Boston. Wedding plans were made, deposits paid, and 2 weeks before the big day, the engagement was called off. Quietly, no press. Nothing scandalous? I asked. No police reports, no lawsuits. But, Damon said, pulling up a financial transaction log, within 6 months of the breakup, she had enough money for a down payment on a luxury condo. The groom's family filed bankruptcy the following year. I felt my stomach drop. So she's done this before. He nodded. She picks rising men, ones with promise, access, or legacy, attaches herself like a badge of elegance, drains what she can, and moves on. Clean. No mess. Just a new chapter. My breath caught in my throat. I thought about Marcus, so eager to belong, so hungry for approval he never had to earn from me, how easy it must have been for Brielle to mold him into something useful, and then discard him once the shine wore off. She's not just using him, I whispered. She's dismantling him. Damon leaned forward. We need a plan. I already have one, I said. I'm going to the wedding. He blinked. You said he told you not to, and I listened. Once. I won't again. I reached into a drawer and pulled out the invitation, still sealed, still offensive. I held it up between us. They want my money, but not my presence. That ends now. Damon hesitated. You sure? This could blow up. It needs to. He nodded slowly. Then we do it smart. He outlined a strategy. He'd keep digging, find out more about Brielle's family, her real motivations, any leverage we could uncover. I would stay quiet for now. Let things unfold without giving her reason to hide. But when the time comes, I said, voice steady, we do it publicly. I'll be ready. As he packed up, he paused at the door. Gloria, are you okay? Really? I didn't answer right away. I looked past him, toward the street where Marcus once rode his bike in circles, legs too long for the frame, but smiling like the world was his. I'm not okay, I said finally. But I'm not done. He nodded. That's enough for now. That night, I wrote Marcus a letter. I didn't send it. I wasn't even sure I would. But I had to put the words somewhere before they drowned me. Dear Marcus, I never expected you to be perfect. I never raised you to be invincible. I only ask that you be kind and that you never forget who stood with you when no one else did. If you're ashamed of me now, I can live with that. But I will not apologize for protecting you, even if you don't see the danger yet. One day, I hope you'll understand. Love, always. Mama. I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer. It sat beside his kindergarten report card and the macaroni necklace he made me for Mother's Day when he was 6. I may have lost my place in his story, but I wasn't going to disappear quietly. Friday morning came dressed in warm spring air and the smell of cut grass, but I greeted it with a coat of suspicion. Damon had warned me. This isn't just a love story gone wrong. It's a campaign. You're up against people who plan their optics like politicians. I believed him. I spent the early hours scrubbing the kitchen. Not because it needed cleaning, God knows I kept a tidy house, but because my hands needed something to do. I polished the same spot on the counter until I saw my reflection staring back, tired and tight-lipped. Then I heard the soft chime of my phone. A text from Damon. Meet me at Grayson Holdings. Bring nothing but your eyes and ears. 3 p.m. I stared at it for a long second, then typed a simple response. On my way. Grayson Holdings was Brielle's family's company, real estate development, luxury architecture, generational money. Their offices were downtown, in one of those new steel and glass buildings that tried too hard to look timeless. I hadn't been downtown in years. There was never a reason. Until now. I dressed in my Sunday best not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to be seen clearly. A navy blue dress I'd worn to Marcus's college graduation, low heels, and my pearls. Not the real kind, of course, but they carried the weight of real pride. I wasn't trying to look like money. I was trying to look like someone who couldn't be dismissed. The lobby was cold marble floors, chrome furniture, everything too white to feel lived in. A young receptionist with a headset gave me a once-over, her lips twitching slightly before she forced a customer service smile. May I help you? I'm meeting someone from internal communications, I said smoothly. Last minute, Damon Wilson. She checked a list, nodded, and waved me toward the elevator. 4th floor. The doors opened silently. As I stepped inside, I caught my reflection again, just a flicker, and for a brief second, I saw not the mother, not the nurse, not even the hurt woman from last week, but someone sharper, someone awakening. Damon met me just past the elevator. You look impressive, he said with a half smile. I look like a woman with receipts, I replied. He laughed, low and brief, then motioned for me to follow. We walked through glass-walled hallways where young professionals tapped away at laptops, their expressions identical, determined, anxious, polished. Everyone wore black, white, or beige. It was like walking through a modern art exhibit where all the paintings had been bleached of personality. We stopped near a side office, and Damon opened the door gently. She's in there, he whispered. I stepped inside and paused. There sat Brielle, alone, talking on the phone with her back to the door, unaware of us. She laughed, light and airy, like wind chimes. Her voice floated through the space. Yes, Daddy, I know. But once the wedding photos hit, the offers will triple. Just trust me. Marcus looks the part. He's perfect for the launch campaign. My heart stuttered. Launch campaign? She paused, then said, No, he doesn't know. He doesn't need to. He's just grateful to be included. I've got him eating from my hand. And his mother, don't even worry. She's out of the picture. I took a slow breath, my hands clenched at my sides. Damon touched my elbow and gestured for us to step out before she noticed us. I nodded stiffly. We moved back into the hallway. My knees wobbled slightly. She's not just using him, I said again, more bitterly this time. She's monetizing him. She's marketing Marcus like he's a handbag. Damon nodded. We have the audio. I recorded that call. Good, I said, voice sharp. Now we wait. That night I didn't cook dinner. I wasn't hungry. Instead, I poured myself a glass of sweet tea and sat on the back porch. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine, and cicadas had begun their summer chorus early. I watched the sun dip behind the trees, gold melting into lavender, and I thought about how small moments used to mean everything to Marcus. How we used to sit just like this, he with a popsicle, me with my tea, watching stars peek through the darkening sky. He used to ask, Mama, why does the sky change colors at night? And I'd answer, because even the sky needs to rest its brightness. But now, it wasn't just the sky that had changed. My son had changed. His world had changed. His compass had cracked. I reached for my phone and opened his contact. My thumb hovered over the call button. I didn't press it. Instead, I typed another message. You were my sunrise. Don't let someone else turn you into a storm. I hit send. I don't know why. Maybe I just needed him to remember who he used to be. The next morning, Damon called. She's having a bridal preview party. Big one. Press, influencers, sponsors. It's next Saturday. I exhaled. So the performance begins. He paused. You want to go? Absolutely, I said. But not as a guest. As what then? As a mother, I said. Who has something to show? He understood. Then we'll plan it carefully, he said. Because after this, there's no going back. I never intended to. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again and opened a new folder. I titled it The Truth About Brielle. I printed the transcript Damon had collected and highlighted every word that showed her intention. I didn't know yet how this would end, but I knew one thing. The day Brielle looked me in the eye again, she'd see someone different. Not invisible. Not soft. Not willing. She'd see the mother of the man she thought she could reshape, and I'd make sure the world saw the truth. I stood across the street from the Grayson estate with my hands balled tightly inside my purse. The house looked like something pulled from a lifestyle magazine. Limestone facade, circular driveway, fountains spewing water that glistened in the midday sun. And today, the Graysons had outdone themselves. Rows of white tents stood like glimmering sails across the front lawn. Valets moved in rhythm, guiding Teslas and Bentleys into perfect rows. Gold balloons framed the entrance. Strings of fairy lights glittered under the afternoon sky, pretending it was already dusk. It wasn't just a party. It was a statement. And somewhere in that show, my son was standing next to the woman who called me disposable. I checked the time. 3:12 p.m. I was exactly 12 minutes behind the official invitation start time on purpose. I didn't want to be there for the staged arrival of Brielle, nor for the camera flashes when Marcus would be pulled into frame like a prize she'd won. I wasn't invited, of course, but Damon had a plan. He arrived 5 minutes later in a pressed navy blazer, camera slung across his chest, a sleek press badge hanging around his neck. It was a real badge, too. Damon freelanced for a lifestyle blog now, and today it bought us entry into the lion's den. "You ready?" he asked. "No," I replied honestly, "but I'm going in anyway." He handed me a small Bluetooth earpiece. "You'll hear me through this. I'll walk around, get shots, listen. You move slow. Watch. Don't react yet." I nodded. My heels crunched against the gravel as we crossed into enemy territory. Inside the tented courtyard, everything gleamed. Waiters passed flutes of champagne. A live quartet played Vivaldi. Over in the corner, a floral arch nearly 10 feet tall served as a backdrop for photo ops, framed by blooming white orchids and gold lettering that read, "Brielle and Marcus, a legacy begins." Legacy. There was that word again. I scanned the crowd. Men in tailored suits, women in satin pastels. Everyone speaking in tones meant to sound casual but carried an edge of performance. I didn't belong here, and not just because no one had invited me. I caught glimpses of Brielle from across the tent. She wore a cream-colored gown, somewhere between wedding dress and red carpet illusion. Her hair was pinned up like a movie star from the 40s. She smiled at everyone, touched arms, laughed gently. She looked like royalty, and she held Marcus's hand like it was hers. He looked different, tired, slimmer. His smile flickered only when someone looked directly at him. His eyes didn't shine. I saw him tug at his collar twice in the span of a minute. Damon's voice came through the earpiece. "She's got 2 major sponsors here today," he said. "Boutique hotel group and a luxury lifestyle brand. They're finalizing content packages this weekend. Photos, posts, video clips. This whole thing's a setup." "For what?" "For Brielle," he said. "She's turning her wedding into a platform, her brand pivot into digital influence. She's already tagged Marcus in 3 promotional posts. He's part of her pitch deck." I swallowed hard. My son, the same boy who once cried when he lost his lucky pencil, was now a bullet point in a sponsorship deal. I stepped closer to the champagne bar, pretending to sip, pretending to belong. That's when I heard it, 2 women whispering just behind me. "She's really turned him around," one said. "He used to be so, rough around the edges." The other agreed. "Brielle smoothed him out. He's practically Grayson now." I turned slightly. They were mid-30s, draped in soft silk, diamond studs in their ears. They didn't recognize me, but I recognized the tone. That's the way people talk about rescue dogs. A ripple of laughter rolled through the crowd as Brielle's father stepped up to the microphone. "Friends, family, honored guests," he began. "Thank you for joining us in celebrating not just a union but a future." I felt my fingers curl tighter around the stem of my glass. He went on, praising Brielle's eye for vision, her business acumen, her talent for elevating every room she entered. And then he turned to Marcus. "And of course, Marcus Washington," he said with a chuckle. "We couldn't have imagined a better addition to the family. Handsome, driven, and incredibly lucky." The crowd laughed. Lucky. I wanted to scream. I wanted to stand on the table and remind them who this boy was, how he was the product of love, not luck, of sweat, not sponsorships, how he was raised in a house with second-hand furniture and home-cooked values, not wrapped in silk napkins and empty praise. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I stepped to the side of the tent where Damon had gestured for me. A narrow opening behind the floral backdrop led to a staging area where servers bustled and staff checked clipboards. Damon met me there with a small tablet. "What's this?" I asked. "A slideshow," he said. "I dug through her old posts, the deleted engagement, the financial paper trail. You told me you wanted the truth to be seen. And we hacked the presentation screen. When the slideshow starts, this goes up instead." I stared at the screen. Brielle's glossy perfection side by side with quiet truth. The other fiancé. The business deals. The dates lining up too neatly. The pitch deck slide with Marcus's face labeled Diversity Integration Asset. I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. "You can still walk away," Damon said quietly. "Say nothing. Let the wedding happen. Let him learn on his own." I shook my head. "He won't walk away," I said. Not unless something pulls the curtain. A few minutes later, they called everyone to gather around for a preview video. "Let's take a look at the love story that brought us here," the planner announced. The screen blinked. Then it started. Not the love story. The truth. Photos, documents, screenshots, incriminating timelines. And then, Brielle's own voice, from the audio Damon recorded in her office. "He's just grateful to be included. I've got him eating from my hand, and his mother don't even worry. She's out of the picture." Gasps. Silence. Then the room broke open with murmurs and confusion. I stood just outside the crowd, heart pounding, watching my son turn slowly toward the screen. His eyes widened, his shoulders stiffened, and for the first time in months, maybe longer, he looked awake. He turned again, this time toward Brielle. Her face was pale, lips parted. She tried to speak, but the microphone was gone. So was the music. The illusion was shattered. And I stepped out into the light, not to gloat, not to destroy, but to save my son one last time. There was a moment, a heartbeat, when the entire tent stood still. No clinking of glasses, no whispers, just air too thick to breathe and eyes that didn't know where to look. I walked into that silence. Marcus turned as I approached, his expression a mosaic of confusion, humiliation, and something else, something sharp, a crack in the mask. His lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I stopped a few feet away. Not too close. Not yet. Brielle spun toward the event planner, hissing something urgent, waving manicured fingers like she could shoo the moment away. But the damage had already seeped in. Her perfect day had split at the seams, and the truth spilled out in front of the very people she'd invited to admire her perfection. Damon stood behind the sound booth, expression unreadable. He gave a subtle nod, our cue that the footage had been cut, the damage done. No need to press further. The rest was up to them now. I turned to Marcus. "Can we talk?" I asked, softly, not pleading, just offering. He hesitated. Around us, people started to murmur again, like buzzards circling something broken. I don't know what's going on," he said. "What is this? What did you do?" "Not here," I replied. "Let's step outside." He looked at Brielle. Her face was pale, eyes frantic, lips tight with fury. She reached for his arm, but he stepped back an inch, maybe two. Not much, but it was enough. I saw her face change then. Not sorrow, not fear. Calculating, Marcus followed me out of the tent. We walked around the back of the estate, where the laughter and cameras couldn't reach. The sun was dipping behind the hedges, painting the sky in gold and fire. I stopped near a stone bench and waited. He didn't sit, just stood there, arms crossed, jaw tight. "You embarrassed me," he said low. "In front of everyone. I exposed the truth," I answered. "And the people who were embarrassed. Maybe they had reason to be." He shook his head. "You've always thought you knew best." "No," I said. "I've always hoped you would." He blinked, surprised. "I didn't raise you to be rich, Marcus. I didn't raise you to be famous. I raised you to be good. And I watched you lose yourself in a world that sees you as a trophy instead of a man." His arms dropped slightly. "She loved me," he muttered. "She said I was different from what she'd known." "She didn't love you," I said gently. "She loved your story, your struggle. It made her look good, until it didn't." He looked away. The wind moved gently through the trees. I stepped closer. "Do you remember the day you got into Howard?" I asked. "You dropped the envelope, couldn't open it. You were shaking." He nodded, slowly. "I opened it for you," I said. "And we cried in the kitchen, because we'd made it, both of us." His eyes glistened. "You worked so hard," I said, "and I stood behind you, every hour, every loan, every night shift." He finally met my gaze. "And when you met Brielle, I prayed she'd see what I saw, but instead she started rewriting you." He said nothing. "I didn't come here to shame you, Marcus. I came to remind you that you're not someone to be used. You're not an accessory. You are enough." Tears welled up in his eyes then. He tried to blink them back, but one fell, tracing down his cheek. "I didn't know," he whispered. "I know. I thought," his voice broke, "I thought maybe if I fit in with them, I'd stop feeling like I never belonged anywhere." My chest ached. I reached out, gently, and touched his hand. "You belong with people who see you," I said, "not people who brand you." We stood in silence. Finally, he asked, What now? That's up to you, I said. But I won't fund another lie. I won't be a wallet in the shadows. He nodded. I don't know if I can walk away, he admitted. Not without losing everything I've built. You're not losing anything real, I replied. You're saving something real. Yourself. Just then, the faint sound of raised voices reached us. Brielle. She was arguing with her father, hands flying in sharp, angry gestures. Damon had slipped back into the crowd, catching everything quietly. Marcus watched for a beat, then turned away. Let's go, he said. I blinked. Go where? Home, he said. I want to go home. I didn't cry, not then. But inside, a dam cracked. We walked away from the noise, from the curated chaos, from the circus. My heels sank slightly into the lawn, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, my son walked beside me, not ahead, not behind. Beside. As we reached the gate, Marcus turned and glanced once over his shoulder. She's not going to go quietly, he said. No, I replied, but neither will I. The drive home was quiet. Marcus took the wheel. Hands gripped at 10 and 2 like he used to when he first got his license. He didn't play any music. We didn't talk much. But the silence between us wasn't sharp like it had been. It was soft, tentative like a wound starting to close. I watched his profile under the passing streetlights. The same boy I had rocked to sleep, who once cried because his goldfish died, now wore the look of a man who'd just realized the floor beneath his feet wasn't solid after all. He pulled into my driveway just after sunset. The porch light glowed, steady and warm. Home. It had been a while since he'd been here. Want to come in? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then quietly, yeah. Inside, the house smelled of lemon cleaner and cinnamon comfort smells. Marcus looked around like he was walking into a museum of his own past. His old baseball cap still hung on the coat rack. A framed photo of us at his high school graduation sat proudly on the console table. He reached out and touched the corner of the frame. You never took any of it down? No, I said simply. Why would I? He didn't respond, but his shoulders relaxed slightly. He sat at the kitchen table while I made tea just like I used to. The kettle whistled, the mugs clinked, and soon we sat across from each other in the dim kitchen, steam curling between us. I don't even know where to start, he finally said. You don't have to, I told him. You're here. That's enough for tonight. But he shook his head. No, I've been blind, Mama. And I've been cruel. His voice cracked, and for a moment, I saw the boy again. She made me feel like I wasn't enough on my own, like I had to become something else to matter. I sipped my tea, giving him space. She'd say things like, "Let me handle this, Marcus. You wouldn't understand how people like this think." Or, "You should dress more like them, speak differently around sponsors." At first I thought she was helping me, guiding me. He looked up. But really, she was erasing me. I reached across the table and laid my hand gently over his. I watched you disappear, I said softly, and I wanted to scream every day. He took a deep breath. She knew I'd do anything to prove myself. She used that. I nodded. They always do. That's how manipulation works. It doesn't take what you don't give, it waits until you offer everything. He looked down, ashamed. And I offered you up too. That made my chest tighten. But I forced my voice to stay calm. You believed the lie, that I was the problem. I did, he whispered. And I'll never forgive myself for what I said to you, for pushing you. We sat with that a moment. The weight of it. The bruise on my hip had faded, but some wounds cut deeper than skin. I'm not asking you to forgive yourself right now, I said. Just promise me you'll never let anyone rewrite who you are again. I promise. The front doorbell rang. We both froze. Marcus glanced at me. You expecting someone? No. He stood first, protective now, and stepped to the front door. I followed slowly. When he opened it, a courier stood there in a black uniform, holding a sleek white envelope. Delivery for Mr. Marcus Washington, the man said, eyes flicking between us. Marcus took it. The courier walked off without another word. We stared at the envelope together. Open it, I said. He broke the seal and unfolded the paper inside. One sentence stared back at us in tall, cold print. Cease and desist. Defamation and breach of agreement. Issued on behalf of Miss Brielle Grayson. Marcus's face drained of color. She's suing me? He said. No, I replied, voice low and steady. She's warning you. It's the first shot, not a war yet. He stepped back, crumpling the paper in his fist. I can't believe her. She's not going to go quietly, remember? He turned to me, panic creeping into his eyes. She has contacts, lawyers, money. They'll destroy me, Mama. No, I said firmly. They'll try to scare you. That's what this is. She's not building anything new. She's protecting what she thinks she's owed. I took the letter from his hand, smoothed it out, and laid it on the table. You're going to need a lawyer, I said. He nodded, still in shock. And I'm going to need to talk to Damon. Later that night, after Marcus had fallen asleep on the couch, exhausted, mentally spent, I sat alone at the table, rereading the letter. My heart thumped not from fear, but resolve. Brielle thought she could silence us, thought we'd retreat the moment she turned to the system that always protects people like her. But she didn't know me. She didn't know the decades I spent navigating bureaucracy, surviving hospital boards, dealing with men who thought a black woman in scrubs had no voice. She didn't know I'd spent half my life advocating for patients no one listened to. She didn't know I'd learned to fight quietly and win. The next morning, I made the first call, not to a lawyer, but to Miss Elaine Porter, a friend from my church choir who also happened to be the sharpest civil rights attorney I knew on the East Side. Elaine, I said calmly, I need to talk. She didn't ask why. She just said, come by at noon, bring everything. And I would, because the truth had already been spoken. Now it was time to protect it. Elaine Porter lived in a modest red brick bungalow tucked between a gospel bookstore and a faded laundromat off Peachtree Avenue. Her house always smelled of peppermint tea and old wood, and her front porch had hosted more whispered strategy sessions than any courtroom in Atlanta. I arrived 5 minutes early with a folder under my arm, the letter, the screenshots, the timeline Damon printed out. Everything neatly labeled, paper-clipped and marked with notes in my handwriting. If Brielle wanted to turn this into a war of paper, she'd underestimated just how prepared I could be. Elaine opened the door, wearing her usual. A linen blazer over a turtleneck and slacks, earrings like silver question marks dangling from each ear. Come on in, Gloria, she said, voice low and commanding. We sat at her kitchen table beneath the same portrait of Thurgood Marshall she'd had for decades. She poured tea, black with honey, and motioned for the folder. I slid it across the table. She didn't speak for the first 15 minutes, just read. Her eyes scanned fast, precise, underlined certain words with a pencil. Occasionally she grunted, once shook her head. When she finally looked up, she exhaled through her nose like steam from a kettle. She's not just petty, she said. She's strategic. This letter is meant to do 3 things. Scare Marcus, isolate you, and make sure no one else dares to speak the truth. Elaine tapped a finger on the cease and desist notice. This doesn't have teeth, not yet, but it's designed to intimidate. If Marcus responds recklessly, if he says the wrong thing, they'll escalate. Can they really sue? I asked. She nodded slowly. Sure, anyone can file a suit, but will it hold up? Not likely, based on what I've seen. You're telling the truth. Damon has receipts. The recordings were legal. Georgia's a one-party consent state. The only risk is how this plays out in public. Brielle's betting on shame, I said. She thinks Marcus won't fight because he's too embarrassed. She might be right, Elaine said. Men don't always recover well from being manipulated, especially not when it's public. I sipped my tea and stared at the wood grain on her table. He's stronger than she thinks, I murmured. He just needs someone to remind him who he used to be. Elaine folded her arms. So what do you want to do? I want to make sure she doesn't walk away clean, I said. I don't need revenge. I need her to stop. Elaine nodded. Then here's what we do. By the time I got back home, the plan was clear. Elaine would draft a formal response professional, restrained, no hint of panic. She'd also prepare a counterclaim if Brielle escalated. In the meantime, Damon and I would organize our evidence in a secure format and begin documenting the smear campaign that had already begun online. Because it had begun. That night, Marcus sat at my kitchen table with his laptop open, scrolling in silence. I watched his face grow tight, eyes narrowing. She's spinning the story, he said quietly. I walked over and looked at the screen. Brielle had posted a photo of herself in soft focus, her hand resting delicately over her heart. The caption read, When people you trust betray your light, you protect your peace. Some people can't handle your shine, but I will never dim mine. Thousands of likes. Comments from strangers. Stay strong, Queen. People always come for successful women. You don't owe anyone your story. Marcus closed the laptop with a snap. She's turning herself into the victim. She's always been good at flipping the script, I said. He stood and paced the room. I want to respond. Post something. Not yet, I said. Let Elaine handle it. You respond emotionally, you feed the fire. He looked at me, eyes blazing. I'm tired of being calm. I know, baby, I said. But silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. He sank into the couch, head in his hands. Do you think people will believe her? He asked. Some will, I answered. But the ones who matter? They'll wait for the truth. He nodded, slowly. I don't want her to destroy everything, he whispered. She won't, I said. Because this time, you're not alone. The next morning, Damon arrived with a jump drive and a new folder of findings. Her father's trying to scrub her history, he said, setting down his laptop. They've already contacted the blog that ran the Boston engagement announcement. Article's been deleted. I clenched my jaw. They're cleaning house. Which means we have to move fast, he said. Strike before they can whitewash the past. Marcus sat silently in the corner. I can't believe it's come to this, he said. It always was this, Damon replied. You're just seeing it clearly now. He turned the laptop around. I pulled the original archived version of the deleted article, and we've got her engagement contract, too, attached to a now defunct wedding planner's email chain. The timeline overlaps with when she started dating you, Marcus. Marcus's jaw tightened. So I was plan B? No, I said firmly. You were plan next. Damon leaned forward. We've got enough to build a clear narrative. Repeated patterns of manipulation, financial gain, brand elevation, through proximity to men with upward mobility. Elaine's voice echoed in my mind. She's not petty. She's strategic. Marcus finally spoke. Let's go public. I looked at him, surprised. Are you sure? He nodded. If she wants to play this game, then we play too. But this time, we don't lie. We don't twist. His voice grew stronger. We tell the truth. Damon grinned. Then let's get to work. And just like that, we stopped playing defense. It went live on a Sunday. A simple, black and white statement posted on Marcus's Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn all at once. No photos, no tags, no drama. Just the truth. From Marcus, Washington. Asterisk. I've spent the last year learning the difference between love and control, support and manipulation. I want to thank those who've stood by me while I've untangled what was real from what was manufactured. I take responsibility for my silence and the people it hurt, including my own mother. I will no longer be participating in any joint business ventures, brand partnerships, or social campaigns associated with Brielle Grayson. I wish her peace, but I also claim my peace. The truth always looks messy at first. But I believe in clarity. Thank you for giving me the space to find it. Asterisk. It went viral within 2 hours. Damon monitored the analytics, mouth twitching with restrained satisfaction. 38,000 impressions in the first 90 minutes. Screenshots spreading on Twitter. Half the influencer blogs already picked it up. You just pulled the plug on her entire launch. Marcus sat silently, staring at his phone. I could see his fingers trembling, just slightly. You okay? I asked. I don't know, he said. I guess I thought I'd feel free. You don't? I asked gently. I feel exposed. I reached over and squeezed his shoulder. Sometimes that's the first step toward freedom. By Monday, the phone started ringing. Elaine handled the legal pushback. Nothing Brielle sent had teeth, just more threatening letters, one of which demanded Marcus take down his post or face a defamation suit. Elaine's response was swift and elegant, quoting statutes and case law like a woman who had argued in courtrooms full of men twice her size and won. By Tuesday, I started getting the other calls. Not lawyers, people. Sister Beverly from church. I saw that post, baby. If Marcus needs prayer, I got my whole circle on standby. My old friend Lorraine from the hospital. I always had a feeling about that girl. Too polished, too quiet, too much shade in that smile. And then the other kind. Mrs. Halverson from the block. I just hope you're not exaggerating things. That girl came from a good family. Deacon Morris, don't bring your family drama into the public, Gloria. These things can be handled quietly. Quietly. That word again. The one people always use when they want you to suffer with grace. I didn't respond to most of them. Just nodded, smiled politely, and let the comments fall like dust. But deep down, I felt it the ripple. The way people react when a respectable woman stops being quiet. The grocery clerk raised her eyebrows when I used my card. Big week, huh? My neighbor, 2 houses down, paused while checking her mail. All that trouble for a wedding, Lord. No one said it outright, but the undertone was clear. You're making a mess. But I wasn't. I was cleaning one up. One afternoon, I came home to find an envelope shoved into my screen door. No address, no stamp, just my name written in gold ink. I brought it inside, sat at the kitchen table, and opened it. Inside was a single photo, Brielle in her wedding dress, standing alone beneath the arch of orchids. Her eyes locked with the camera. Her smile was cold. On the back, someone had written, "You think this is over? It's only just begun." No signature, no explanation. But I knew the handwriting. I held the photo in my lap, heart pounding, rage rising slow and steady in my chest. That girl had the audacity to threaten me in my own home, on my own turf. She thought she could rattle me, make me back down. I reached for the landline and called Elaine. "We've got escalation," I said. "Describe it," I told her. "I want you to document everything," she said. "Date it, photograph it, store it digitally. We're not just building a defense now, we're building a case." A case for what? Harassment, maybe more. She's slipping, Gloria. And people like that, when they feel control slipping, they start doing stupid things. I hung up and stared at the photo a little longer. Then I lit a match. Watched it burn in the sink. Ash and gold curling together in silence. That night, Marcus came into the kitchen with his laptop. "I think I want to do an interview," he said. I looked up, surprised. "You sure?" He nodded. "Just one. A podcast or online feature, something long form, not flashy. I want to control the story before she twists it again." Damon tapped a few keys. "I know someone. A journalist I trust. She won't sensationalize. She'll let you talk." Marcus looked at me. "Would you do it with me?" The question caught me off guard. "You want me there?" "I need you there," he said. "People need to hear what happened. From both of us." I felt something inside me shift. For so long I'd been fighting to be heard by my own son. Now he was inviting me to speak beside him. "Yes," I said. "Let's do it." And that night, for the first time in months, I slept without fear. The battle wasn't over, not yet, but something had changed. We weren't just surviving anymore. We were reclaiming. The podcast studio was tucked inside a repurposed warehouse on the edge of Atlanta's downtown. From the outside, it looked like nothing, just bricks and ivy, a faded steel door, and a modest sign that read Civic Sound. But inside, it was a different world. Soundproof walls, velvet-backed chairs, warm lighting, and a quiet that made every breath feel intentional. Marcus and I arrived 15 minutes early. Damon met us at the door, clipboard in hand, looking every bit the producer he'd become in the past few weeks. "You sure about this?" he asked Marcus. "No," Marcus replied, "but I'm doing it anyway." The host was a woman named Tasha Reed, mid-40s, no nonsense, her voice like molasses with bite. She welcomed us with a firm handshake and direct eye contact, no pretense, no agenda. Just curiosity and space. "This isn't a gotcha show," she said. "We let people speak, and people listen." That's all I wanted. The studio lights dimmed, headphones on, microphones adjusted, and then the red light blinked on. Tasha leaned in. "Today, I'm joined by Gloria Washington and her son, Marcus Washington. You may recognize Marcus's name from recent headlines, social posts, or maybe just whispers in your community. But today, we're going to skip the headlines and hear the real story from them." She turned toward Marcus. "Marcus, let's start simple. Why are you here?" He exhaled. "I'm here to tell the truth," he said, "because I didn't realize how far I'd drifted until someone I love risked everything to bring me back." He looked at me when he said it. Tasha smiled gently. "And Gloria, what was it like watching from the outside?" I cleared my throat, then leaned toward the mic. It felt like watching my son drown with his eyes open, like he didn't know the water was rising. I paused. The room held still. I didn't speak up to ruin his wedding. I spoke up because I refused to fund my own erasure. That line hit home. Even Tasha blinked. We talked for nearly 2 hours. Marcus told the story from his perspective, the slow seduction of status, how Brielle flattered his ambition while subtly dismantling his roots. He spoke of the pressure to perform, to match the Graysons in wealth, polish, pedigree, of the growing distance from the boy he used to be. I told my side, too, of watching him shrink beneath her shadow, of the insults I absorbed, the moments I bit my tongue, the fall that bruised more than my skin. We shared the fight, the unspoken grief, the letter that shook us both. At one point, Tasha asked, "Gloria, what hurt the most?" I didn't hesitate. The day my son looked at me like I was an inconvenience. That broke something. Marcus reached over, squeezed my hand. "I'm sorry," he said. Not to the mic, to me. I nodded, unable to speak for a moment. And when the interview ended, the red light dimmed and silence returned. I realized something. We hadn't just reclaimed the story. We had reclaimed each other. The episode aired the next day. It was titled The Mother, the Mirror, and the $1 Million Wedding. By noon, it had 75,000 downloads. By evening, it trended in every major podcast platform's top stories section. And the responses? Mixed. Some praised Marcus's honesty. "He's a grown man owning his mistakes," one listener posted. "That's rare. Respect." Others called it petty. Why drag a woman down just because she didn't want to live poor? One tweet read, "This Gloria woman seems like she's just mad she's not in control anymore." I laughed when I saw it. If only they knew, I told Damon. Control was never the point. I just wanted to be seen. But not everyone judged. A message arrived in my inbox late that night from a woman named Charmaine in North Carolina. "Miss Washington," I cried, listening to your story. "My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 3 years, all because her husband told her I was low class. I thought maybe I was the only one. Thank you for showing us we're not invisible. With love, Charmaine B." I read it twice, then a third time, and then I cried, not because I was sad, because someone, somewhere, felt less alone. 3 days later, Marcus got an email. Not from Brielle, from her lawyer. "Per our client's request, all legal action is hereby withdrawn. The matter is considered closed. No apology. No admission of guilt. Just retreat." Cowardice with a law degree. Marcus stared at the email and then looked at me. "She gave up," he said. "No," I replied. "She moved on to her next opportunity. That's what people like her do. But you stayed. You grew." He nodded. "I'm not the same man I was a month ago." "No," I said softly. "You're better." He looked around the house, eyes landing on an old framed quote on my wall, something I hung years ago without thinking much of it. "Truth doesn't shout, it simply stands." Marcus read it aloud. And then, quietly, he whispered, "It's time I stood too." In the weeks after the interview, the world slowed down. Not for everyone, certainly not for Brielle, who moved quickly onto new platforms, new hashtags, new healing journeys, curated in beige-toned selfies and product placements. But for us, for me and Marcus, the whirlwind stopped. And when the noise faded, we were left with the quiet work of repair. It started small. He showed up early one Sunday morning and mowed the lawn without saying a word. Left a coffee by my porch swing with extra cream, just how I like it. He didn't knock. He didn't ask for praise. He just did it. That's how I knew he was trying. Sometimes the people who hurt you don't say, "I'm sorry," not in words. They say it in changed behavior, in consistency, in presence. And Marcus was showing up. He came to church with me the next Sunday, sat quietly through Pastor Green's sermon on the prodigal and the patient, and didn't flinch when the older women whispered and side-eyed him at the potluck. He helped Sister Maybelle carry a tray of banana pudding to the buffet line without being asked. That night, he helped me wash dishes in silence. When I handed him a clean plate to dry, he finally spoke. "I didn't just hurt you, Mama. I humiliated you." I set the plate down. "I won't argue with you," I said. He smiled wryly. "That's new. But I will tell you this," I continued. "You hurt me, yes. But you didn't kill what was between us. That takes more than pride. It takes abandonment. And you came back." His eyes shimmered, but he didn't cry. Not then. He just nodded and kept drying. That week, I received a letter from the Graysons. Typed, formal, no signature. Asterisk Mrs. Washington. "We request that you and your son cease speaking publicly about our daughter and family. Continued discourse may impact reputational stability and brand viability. We believe discretion benefits all parties. Sincerely, Legal Counsel for the Grayson Family. Asterisk." I laughed out loud. Reputational stability. It took them this long to realize that silence is what they should have bought, but they never believed someone like me could hold power without a price tag. I didn't respond. Silence, this time, was mine. One evening, Marcus came into the kitchen carrying a worn box. He set it on the table and looked nervous. "I found this in the attic," he said. "Thought you might want it." I opened the box. Photos. Old report cards. Doodles from elementary school. A homemade card from 2nd grade that read, "To the best mama who ever lived." I held the card in my hand for a long time. "I used to believe that," Marcus said quietly. I looked at him. He met my eyes. "I still do." I closed the lid and nodded. "Then that makes 2 of us." We didn't need to hug. The room was already full. We started therapy the following week. Not together, at first. Marcus wanted to do it alone. He needed space to unpack the layers Brielle had built around his self-worth. I needed a place to understand my own anger, why it boiled over, why it settled like ash in my chest. I thought healing would feel like joy. It didn't. It felt like grief. Grieving the years lost to silence, the milestones missed, the birthdays faked for appearances. The way I used to wait by the phone on Mother's Day for a call that came too late or not at all. I grieved, and then I wrote. For the first time in years, I started journaling again. Not for performance, not for the record, just for me. And in those pages, I began to remember the woman I had been before I became Marcus's mom, or the woman Brielle cut out. I was Gloria, and she was worth remembering. One day, Marcus showed up with a folder of papers. "What's this?" I asked. He slid it across the table. "A proposal." I opened it. He wanted to start a nonprofit, a mentorship program for young Black men navigating higher education and professional spaces. A real thing, with a real board, real goals. "I want to help kids like me," he said, "the ones who grow up feeling like they're not enough, who think success means leaving where they came from behind." I looked at the vision statement, the breakdown of phases, the partners he'd already begun calling. "You wrote this?" "All of it," he said, "and I want you to be part of it. As an advisor, as my moral compass." Tears sprang to my eyes before I could stop them. "I'd be honored," I whispered. He reached over and held my hand. "We don't get to rewrite the past," he said, "but we can sure as hell write the next chapter better." I nodded, and for the first time since all this began, I felt peace. Not the kind you fake for church or company. Real peace. Earned. Ours. The morning of the launch event arrived with the hush of early autumn cool breeze, low golden sun, and the smell of dew-soaked pine in the air. It had taken weeks to plan, and Marcus hadn't rested in days. He'd rehearsed his speech a dozen times in front of the mirror, tightened every line of the proposal, and memorized the bios of every guest who RSVP'd. The launch of Rooted and Rising wasn't just a debut, it was a declaration. A public step into purpose, into restoration not just of reputation, but of identity. The venue was small by design, a renovated community center where Marcus once volunteered in high school, walls now lined with canvas portraits of young Black men in graduation caps and stethoscopes, tool belts and law books. There were folding chairs, fresh coffee, homemade cookies from Sister Maybelle, and flyers printed with Marcus's vision for the next 5 years. But before the crowd arrived, before the ribbon cutting and the press photos, something happened I hadn't expected. There was a knock at my front door. I opened it to find a woman standing with her hands clasped in front of her, chin lifted but unsure. She looked to be in her mid-60s, tall, her silver-streaked hair twisted neatly into a bun. Designer scarf, camel trench coat, eyes like slate behind thick-framed glasses. It took me a moment to recognize her. "Mrs. Grayson," I said, "Brielle's mother." She offered a small nod. "Mrs. Washington." We stared at each other for a breath. There was no warmth, but also no war in her posture. "May I come in?" she asked. I hesitated for a beat, then stepped aside, briefly. She walked in with practiced grace, the kind taught in old money drawing rooms, not kitchens. I motioned to the chair by the window. She declined it with a wave. I won't stay long, she said. I heard about the nonprofit launch. I came to speak. Woman to woman. I raised an eyebrow. To apologize? She hesitated. No, to explain. I crossed my arms. She continued. I didn't condone how Brielle handled things. I told her she was overreaching. I warned her that weaponizing affection always comes at a cost. And yet you supported her, I said. She sighed, eyes tightening. I supported her survival. You wouldn't understand. Try me. She looked at me then not as an opponent, but something closer to a mirror. A mother with regrets. She wasn't always this way, she said. Brielle grew up believing she had to compete to be loved. Her father made sure of that. He praised her when she outdid, when she dominated, never when she simply existed. Pain doesn't justify cruelty, I said quietly. No, she admitted. But it does explain how we inherit our brokenness and how we pass it on. I softened, just slightly. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folded envelope. I found this in her things, she said. It's not mine to keep. It was addressed to Marcus. She never sent it. I didn't take it. She's not my concern anymore, I said. But he is yours, she replied. And you should know what was left unsaid. She placed the envelope on the table, then stood. I wish my daughter had your strength, she said, even when it terrified her. I walked her to the door. Before she stepped out, she paused. I hope he does well today. He will, I said, because this time he's rooted in truth. She nodded once, and then she was gone. At the launch, Marcus stood in front of the room like he belonged there. No script, no teleprompter, just a microphone and a mission. I started this organization, he began, because somewhere along the way, I lost myself, and I want to help young men avoid that loss, to stay grounded, to stay connected, to know that their story matters, even when the world tells them to rewrite it. Applause. I watched from the front row, pride blooming slow and wide in my chest. He spoke of community, of mentorship, of purpose beyond perception. And when he introduced me as one of the founding advisors, the room erupted. I wouldn't be standing here, he said, if it weren't for the woman who taught me that strength and softness can live in the same breath, my mother, Gloria Washington. I stood, slowly, as they clapped. He reached out his hand. And this time, I didn't feel like a shadow or a symbol. I felt seen. That night, when I returned home, I sat alone in the kitchen and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. Marcus, by the time you read this, I imagine things have unraveled. I won't pretend I handled it well. I was scared you'd stop choosing me once you remembered who you are. I didn't want to be left behind by the man you were becoming. You were never a plan. You were a mirror. And I couldn't stand what I saw. Asterisk, I hope you find peace. Brielle? I folded the letter slowly. I would not give it to Marcus, not yet. Maybe one day. But not today. Today belonged to his future, not the ghosts of his past. 2 weeks after the launch, the calls started. First, it was a local news station. Then, a university. Then, a corporate sponsor who had read about Marcus's nonprofit and wanted to partner on urban leadership initiatives. The momentum grew like a wave, organic, powerful, undeniable. Marcus was in demand. I watched as he navigated this new chapter with humility and clarity. He no longer dressed to impress, he dressed to reflect. Gone were the tailored suits meant to mimic the Graysons' image. Now it was clean polos, dark jeans, a notepad always tucked under one arm. He still called every morning, still asked if I needed anything from the store, still came by for Sunday dinner. But I knew something was shifting. He was stepping into his own name, and I was learning to let go, not in pain, but in pride. One rainy afternoon, I received a phone call that made my chest tighten. Is this Gloria Washington? Yes, speaking. This is Dr. Lila Mercer. We met. Oh, it must be nearly 25 years ago. I was chief of surgery back then at Riverfield General. I froze, fingers tightening around the phone. Riverfield. That place had once been my whole world, and then, in a single meeting, It wasn't. I remember, I said slowly. She hesitated. I was calling because we're launching a historical exhibit honoring key staff members from the hospital's early days, especially Black nurses who paved the way. Your name came up more than once. In fact, your old supervisor insisted we find you. I blinked. She did? Evelyn Baines. She retired 2 years ago, but still volunteers in archives. She's been compiling records, photos, testimonials. She's submitted you for the Legacy Award. A pause. I know our past was complicated, Miss Washington, but if you're open to it, we'd be honored if you'd join the ceremony next month, maybe even speak. I didn't answer right away. I thought of the last time I'd stood in that hospital. The way they dismissed my complaint about the surgeon who cut corners, the way they silenced me in the name of professionalism, the way they pushed me out while promoting the man who endangered patients. Why now? I finally asked. Dr. Mercer's voice softened. Because it's long overdue. That night, I told Marcus. We were sitting in the living room, a casserole warming in the oven. He looked up from his notes. Riverfield? Mm-hmm. You going? I shrugged. Part of me wants to. Part of me wants to set the building on fire. He chuckled. I'd support either choice. But, he put his notebook down and looked at me. But maybe, just maybe, you should go. Stand in the room they tried to erase you from. Not for them, for you. I leaned back, thoughtful. It's funny, I said. I spent so much of my life speaking up for people who couldn't. Then when I finally spoke up for myself, they called it a disruption. They were scared, Marcus said, of what happens when the quiet ones stop being quiet. I smiled. He was right. The day of the ceremony came, and I wore navy blue with pearl earrings and a scarf I hadn't taken out since my nursing days. The hospital lobby looked the same, save for a new fountain and freshly painted signs. But I could still see the echoes, the long nights on call, the comfort I offered dying patients, the way I trained new hires like they were my own children. I was shown into a banquet hall with round tables, a small stage, and a slideshow looping portraits of past honorees. And then there it was. My face. My name. Gloria Washington, RN, 1985 to 1998. Compassion, courage, and conviction. Applause rose. Not thunderous, but respectful. Dr. Mercer stood at the podium. Tonight, we honor a woman whose legacy reminds us that truth-tellers don't always fit neatly into systems, but they are the reason systems change. She invited me up. I walked slowly, deliberately. When I reached the mic, I took a breath. I never expected to stand here again, I began. Not because I didn't deserve it, but because for years, this place tried to make me believe I didn't. Silence. I was a nurse here for 13 years. I delivered babies, held hands with the dying, advocated for patients who didn't have family. But the moment I raised my voice against a dangerous protocol, I became a liability. I looked around the room. I wasn't angry because I was dismissed. I was angry because so many others stayed silent, thinking that was the only way to survive. I held up my hands, steady. But I'm still here, still standing, and still telling the truth. Applause rose stronger this time. I stepped down, and as I returned to my seat, I saw Evelyn Baines, older now, but with the same fire in her eyes. She mouthed, "Welcome back," and for the first time, I felt like I had never truly left. After the ceremony, Marcus took me out for ice cream just like he used to when he was 10 and wanted to celebrate something big. We sat on a park bench, cones in hand. "You were incredible," he said. "Like, really incredible." "I was just honest," I said. "Exactly." He licked his scoop, thoughtful. "Do you ever regret it?" "Speaking out?" "No," I said. "But I regret how long I stayed quiet before I did." He nodded, and we sat in silence as the sun dipped low. There was still more to face, still work to do. But in that moment, with sticky fingers and soft twilight, everything felt exactly right. It started with a missed invoice. Just a small payment, a catering fee for a donor event. Marcus shrugged it off at first, assuming it was caught in the shuffle of the nonprofit's rapid growth. But then came the second one. Then a discrepancy in the supply budget. And then a strange phone call from one of their scholarship partners, asking why Marcus's team had opted out of funding a previously approved student grant. Marcus hadn't opted out of anything. He called me that night, his voice tight. "Mama, something's off." I was in my kitchen, folding laundry. "What do you mean?" "I think someone's skimming." The word hung between us, heavy and unfamiliar in the context of something so pure his dream. I stopped folding. "Who's got access to the accounts?" He sighed. "Just me and Angela. Angela Daniels, the program coordinator, the first person Marcus hired. Smart, composed, deeply connected in the nonprofit world. She was the one who color-coded every spreadsheet, who reminded him to eat lunch during board meetings, who once brought me tea with lemon just because she'd overheard I had a cold. I wanted to believe it wasn't her, but I'd lived long enough to know betrayal rarely comes from strangers. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He called Damon, who pulled transaction records. 2 hours later, the proof was there, multiple payments funneled to a dummy account under a fake vendor name. The total loss? Just over $18,000. Enough to damage credibility. Enough to raise red flags with their new sponsors. Enough to break Marcus's heart. When he showed up at my house the next morning, he looked hollowed out. "I trusted her," he said. "She was there from day one." "She was," I said, "and that's why it hurts." He paced the living room. "Do I go public? Do I report her? Or do I just handle it internally and move on?" I stood, walked over, and placed a hand on his shoulder. "What did you build this for?" He looked at me, confused. "Your mission, rooted and rising. What was it about?" He swallowed. "Truth, guidance, integrity." "Then lead with that," I said, "even when it's hard." Angela didn't deny it. When Marcus confronted her in the office, she didn't cry or plead. She just stared at him, eyes steady, then said, "I didn't think you'd notice." He asked her why. She gave a tired shrug. "I helped build this," she said. "While you were out making speeches, I was here late doing the paperwork, chasing the vendors, fielding the angry parents. And when the money started rolling in, I figured I deserved a little more." "You deserved credit," Marcus said. "You deserved thanks, not theft." "I didn't steal from you," she snapped. "I stole from a system that's built on charm and connections. I'm the one who kept it running. But you get the spotlight." He didn't yell. He didn't even raise his voice. "I would have given you a raise," he said. "All you had to do was ask." She looked away. "I didn't trust that you would." That's when he realized it wasn't just the money. It was disillusionment. Angela hadn't believed in the mission anymore. Marcus reported the theft. Not to punish. To protect. He issued a formal statement to the board and donors, taking full responsibility for the oversight. He didn't name her publicly. He didn't bury her, even when some sponsors asked for a public condemnation. "I won't turn my mission into a spectacle," he told them. "This happened, we're fixing it, and we'll be stronger for it." Elaine helped draft the legal notice. Damon implemented tighter financial controls. And I held my son's face in my hands one night and said, "This isn't failure. This is fertilizer. Let it grow you." He nodded, lips trembling. "She was my friend," he whispered. "I know, baby," I said, "but not everyone who walks with you wants to see you rise." That Sunday, at church, Pastor Green pulled Marcus aside after service. "I heard about the situation," he said. Marcus tensed. Pastor Green placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "You handled it like a man," he said. "Not just any man, a leader. Don't let one cracked stone convince you the whole foundation is broken." Marcus exhaled, and for the first time in days, I saw the light return to his eyes. Later that evening, as we sat watching the news, Marcus turned to me. "I've been thinking. I want to create a second program specifically for people leaving nonprofits after burnout, a support group, a training system, something." I smiled. "You want to help the ones like Angela?" He nodded. "The ones who feel invisible, before they break." That's when I knew. He wasn't just rebuilding what was broken. He was expanding what was possible. The letter arrived on a Wednesday. A crisp envelope, embossed seal, and gold-trimmed paper tucked neatly inside. Marcus opened it slowly, eyes scanning, brows rising with each line. "Mama," he said, voice low, "they want to give me an award." I looked up from my book. "Who's they?" "The State Council for Youth Development. Their annual leadership summit. Apparently someone nominated me for their Visionary Impact Award." He handed me the letter. I read it once, then twice. It wasn't just a plaque and a photo op. This was a statewide recognition, a ceremony at the Capitol. Keynote speakers, press coverage. They're calling Rooted and Rising a model for scalable grassroots change, Marcus said, stunned. I saw it in his eyes, pride laced with disbelief. They see you now, I said. He looked at me, and something flickered behind his gaze. No, he said. They see us. The following day, while Marcus handled media prep with Damon, I received a knock at my front door. A young woman stood on my porch, camera bag slung across one shoulder, notepad in hand, freckles, clear glasses, soft curls, and a voice that carried a familiar rhythm, earnest, precise, respectful. Mrs. Washington? Yes? My name's Alana Reyes. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I've been following Marcus's journey, and I read about your story too. The podcast, the Riverfield speech, the Hospital Legacy Award. She shifted her weight, suddenly nervous. I want to tell your story. On camera. I blinked. My story? Yes, ma'am, yours. Not just as Marcus's mother, but as Gloria, the woman who took back her name, her dignity, and helped her son find his. I didn't answer immediately. Too many thoughts pressed in at once: privacy, exposure, the risk of being misunderstood again, the possibility of having my pain turned into someone else's profit. But Alana must have seen something shift in my posture. I'm not here to make a spectacle, she said gently. I'm here to make a record. Because there are women who need to see what survival looks like in the daylight. That did it. I exhaled slowly and opened the screen door wider. You got time for coffee? She smiled. Always. We talked for hours. I showed her old photos, me in my scrubs, Marcus in footy pajamas, my mother at the kitchen table, the hospital ID badge I never threw away. She didn't interrupt much, just asked the right questions. What did you sacrifice? What did silence cost you? What made you finally speak? I didn't cry. Not once. I thought I might. But instead, I felt solid, like stone warmed by sun. Marcus found out 2 days later. You're doing a doc? He said, eyes wide. You? I smirked. Don't sound so surprised. I'm not surprised. I'm impressed. That's all. You sure? He nodded, serious now. Mama, people need your voice. They always have. I'm just glad someone's finally giving it a mic. I touched his cheek. You gave it back to me first. The night of the award ceremony arrived in a swirl of nerves and neckties. Marcus wore a gray suit with a navy tie, the same tie he wore to his college graduation. Damon triple-checked the itinerary. Elaine met us on the Capitol steps with a clutch full of tissues and advice. Inside the grand hall, beneath chandeliers and banners, Marcus took the stage. When the MC read his name, the applause was thunderous. But when Marcus began to speak, the room hushed. I accept this award not because I had all the answers, but because I had someone in my life who refused to let me forget who I was, he said. My mother didn't raise me to chase approval. She raised me to chase truth. And when I lost sight of that, she stood still, like a lighthouse in the storm. He looked straight at me. She didn't speak loud, but when she finally did, I listened, and it changed my life. There were tears, on my face, on others. But most of all, there was honor. Real, earned, seen. That weekend, Alana returned to film the first sit-down interview. Lights were soft, the mic barely visible. She asked me the same question she'd started with days ago. Why now? I looked into the lens, and I said, because I'm done being quiet. Because too many women go invisible the moment their children succeed. Because survival is not enough, dignity must come with it. And because telling the truth is the one thing they can never take back. The room stilled, and I smiled. Not for the camera, for myself. It started as a ripple. The documentary teaser dropped on a Thursday afternoon. A 2-minute clip, soft piano, black and white stills of hospital halls, Marcus's voice describing his mother's strength overlaid with my own quiet narration. By nightfall, it had 400,000 views. By Friday morning, it was viral. Gloria Washington trended on every platform. And I, someone who had once felt invisible even inside my own family, was suddenly a name on everyone's lips. The praise came first. Finally, a story about quiet black heroism that doesn't end in tragedy. This woman reminds me of my own mother, grace and fire in equal measure. Protect Gloria Washington at all costs. Then came the phone calls. NPR. 60 Minutes, a TED Talk request, 2 book agents, and 1 late-night email from a network executive asking if I'd ever considered hosting a show about elder women's wisdom. I laughed so hard I nearly choked on my tea. Marcus, on the other hand, didn't laugh. I noticed the shift in him 3 days after the teaser went live. He was quieter, checked his phone more, smiled less. At dinner, he picked at his food. When I asked what was wrong, he shook his head. Nothing, just tired. But I knew better. Tired wasn't what made his jaw tighten every time someone mentioned my name instead of his. It came to a head when Damon called. "Mama," Marcus said, walking into the living room, phone pressed to his chest. "They want to move the focus of the upcoming summit panel. They're asking if you'd be open to being the featured speaker instead of me." I set down my teacup. "Oh," I said softly. He nodded. "They said your name carries more draw now, that the crowd's asking for you." I waited. He looked at me, wounded. "I built this." "I know," I said. "So does everyone else. But they're looking at you now." I exhaled. "Marcus, look at me." He did, reluctantly. "You're not being erased. You're being joined." He blinked. "This spotlight?" I continued. "It doesn't subtract from your light. It expands it. You pulled me into the light, remember? Now we share it." He looked away. He began, then stopped. "I'm scared it'll change everything." "It will change everything," I said. "But not your worth, not your purpose." He was quiet. Then he whispered, "I'm proud of you." I reached for his hand, and I'm proud of us. That weekend, I delivered the keynote at the summit. Not because I wanted to outshine him, because I knew the audience needed to see what endurance looked like in its final, flowering stage. My speech wasn't polished. I didn't memorize it. I didn't quote data or sprinkle in buzzwords. I told the truth. About raising a son alone. About standing in rooms full of powerful men who refused to hear me. About how it felt to be silenced and how it felt to speak anyway. I ended with this. Somewhere, there's a woman watching this who thinks her time has passed. That the world only wants her wisdom if it's packaged neatly and spoken gently. But let me tell you something. Sister, your story has not expired. It is ripening. And when it's time, it will feed someone's soul. The standing ovation lasted minutes. But it was the moment I stepped off stage and saw Marcus waiting at the bottom of the steps that mattered most. He didn't say anything. He just opened his arms, and I fell into them. Later that week, as I flipped through the mail, I found an envelope without a return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 7 words. "You're louder than they ever expected. B." And I won. No signature. But I didn't need one. Brielle. It wasn't a threat. It was acknowledgement. And in a strange way, it was. Respect. I placed the note in my drawer, beside the Riverfield badge and Marcus's 2nd grade drawing, not as a keepsake, as a record. That even those who tried to shrink you eventually hear you. It came in a manila envelope, no return address. No postage, just slipped into my mailbox like a secret someone didn't want to speak aloud. I nearly tossed it, assuming it was more press material or another overzealous producer trying to turn my story into a limited series, but something about the weight of it made me pause. Inside, a folded letter and a photocopied article from the Tribune, dated the 12th of October, 1998. The headline stopped my breath. "Riverfield nurse's complaint dismissed without review." And there it was. My name. My words twisted, clipped, hollowed of context. An anonymous internal source claiming my allegations were emotionally charged and professionally unfounded. No mention of the surgeon's misconduct. No follow-up. Attached to it was the letter. Handwritten, careful, cursive. "Gloria, I found this while researching another case. I thought you should see it. I don't know if it matters now, but I couldn't live with myself knowing what they buried. I'm sorry it took this long." And in with crossed work thatted. I sat down slowly. And he's now their 7th. Evelyn Baines. My old supervisor. The one who had smiled at me from the crowd at the hospital's legacy ceremony. The woman who handed me flowers and thanked me for my bravery. She knew. And she said nothing. 25 years. 25 years I had believed I'd simply been forgotten. Neglected. Shuffled out the back door by a system that couldn't stomach my voice. But this told me the truth. They hadn't forgotten. They had chosen to erase me. I didn't tell Marcus right away. Not out of secrecy, but out of shame. Isn't that something? After all these years, after the speeches, the applause, the awards, I still flinched when I saw proof that they'd done me wrong. The wound wasn't fresh, but the scar still itched. I stared at the envelope all night, turning the letter over like prayer beads in my hand. The next morning, I went to Marcus's office. He was reviewing grant reports when I walked in, holding the article like a white flag. He looked up, confused at first, then saw my face. "What's wrong?" I sat and handed him the paper. He read silently. Then again. When he finished, he said nothing for a long time, just stared at the corner of his desk. "Mama," he finally said, voice low, "do you want me to burn that place to the ground?" It made me laugh, sharp and sudden. "No, baby," I said, "but I might let you rattle the windows a little." He stood, pacing. "She knew," he growled. "She smiled at you, honored you, all while sitting on this. People do funny things with guilt," I said. "They bury it in flowers and fancy titles. I want to call her." "I don't." He stopped. "Why not?" "Because I don't need closure from someone who chose comfort over courage. I need to make sure it never happens to someone else." He stared at me, realization blooming. "You want to go public?" I nodded. "But carefully," I said. "Not as a scandal, as a warning." He swallowed. "We can do that," he said. "Whatever you need, I've got you." And this time, he was the one holding me. That week, Marcus reached out to the journalist who'd covered the documentary. They agreed to an exclusive follow-up, the unspoken file, focusing on systemic erasure of whistleblowers in healthcare, particularly Black women. We spent days reviewing documents, medical journals, interviews with other nurses, lawyers. The silence was bigger than mine, deeper, generational. Alana came by, camera in hand. "You sure you want this on record?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm not speaking for revenge. I'm speaking for the ones still afraid to raise their hands." She leaned forward. "Then let's tell it right." The feature aired 2 weeks later. It wasn't explosive. It was quiet, controlled, gripping in its steadiness. My voice filled the screen. They said I was too emotional, that I imagined the risk. But that patient's vitals didn't lie, that file didn't lie, and I didn't lie. Screens faded to images of other women, some older, some younger, telling their own versions of being silenced. The article included the original 1998 headline, alongside the newly uncovered memo, confirming that my complaint had been substantiated, but suppressed. Marcus sat beside me during the premiere, hand clenched in mine. When the final frame rolled, the room was silent. And then the applause came. This time, it wasn't for survival. It was for accountability. That night, I received an email from Evelyn Baines. "Gloria, I don't expect forgiveness, but I want you to know I carried the weight, every day. I didn't speak up then, and I regret it more than you can know. I see what you've done with your pain, and I'm grateful, even if I didn't earn it." "Evelyn," I didn't reply. "Some doors don't need to be reopened. Some ghosts don't need to be named." But as I stood at my kitchen window that night, the moonlight catching the curve of my reflection, I whispered to myself, "I see you, Gloria. I finally see you." The backyard smelled of charcoal and honeysuckle. Marcus insisted on hosting the family reunion this year. His idea, his grill, his playlist of old soul records looping through the Bluetooth speaker like a ribbon tying generations together. Folding chairs dotted the lawn, coolers overflowed with soda and lemonade, and cousins I hadn't seen in a decade passed around ribs and potato salad like communion. It had been years since this many Washingtons were in one place, but it didn't feel like a performance. It felt like home. I stood on the porch, watching it all unfold, Marcus holding his baby niece on his hip, Aunt Rita gossiping too loudly under the magnolia tree, Damon helping the kids set up a makeshift slip-and-slide with a tarp and dish soap. A slow smile spread across my face. This was the justice they never wrote about in courtrooms. Later, as dusk folded into evening, Marcus walked over with a paper plate in one hand and a mason jar of tea in the other. "Need a refill?" he asked. I handed him my cup and sank deeper into the rocking chair. "I'm good," I said. "I just want to watch." He followed my gaze, nodding. "It's kinda crazy, isn't it?" he said. "Everything that had to fall apart, for this to come together." "Crazy?" I said. "No, divine, maybe." He handed me my cup and sat on the porch step below me. "You know," he said quietly, "Brielle sent me a message last week." My hand stilled. "What'd she say?" Said she saw the documentary, that she didn't recognize the version of me she married, but she admired the man I've become. I sipped my tea. "She right about one thing," I said. "You are not the man she married." He looked up. "You're better." We sat in silence, the kind that says everything. Around 8 p.m., the fire pit was lit, and someone passed out sparklers to the kids. Laughter bloomed like fireworks, uncontainable and sudden. Aunt Maybelle tapped a spoon to her glass. "All right now," she said. "Before the night gets away from us, I'd like to ask Sister Gloria to say a few words." A soft cheer went up. I waved it off. "Y'all just want me to cry." "We love when you cry," someone shouted. I laughed, stood slowly, and walked to the center of the yard. "All right," I said, clearing my throat. "I'll say this." Everyone quieted. When I was younger, I thought justice looked like a gavel, like someone finally saying, "You were right, they were wrong." Heads nodded. "But now," I continued, "I know justice looks like this. Like family gathered under the sky, like wounds healed enough to become wisdom, like joy that don't ask for permission." Someone clapped. Then another. I held up my glass. 2 second chances, and louder voices. "And a legacy that tells the truth." "To legacy," they echoed. "To Mama G!" someone shouted. I shook my head, laughing. But inside me, something settled. That night, as the last guests left and Marcus gathered the folding chairs, I walked into the house and paused at the kitchen table. It was scratched. Mismatched chairs. A single wilted sunflower in the center vase, but it had held every version of me. The silenced nurse, the struggling mother, the uninvited guest. The woman who finally took her seat back without asking. I reached out, ran my hand over the wood grain, not to clean, not to fix, but to honor. Marcus walked in behind me. He saw what I was doing and didn't say a word, just stood beside me, and together, in the quiet of our own making, we let the past rest, because we had built something louder than silence, because we had survived, but more than that, we had arrived. This story reminds us that silence may protect others, but it can cost us our truth. Gloria's journey teaches us that dignity isn't something given, it's reclaimed, one hard choice at a time. Even when we are cast aside, overlooked, or betrayed, our voices still hold power. And when we finally speak not out of rage, but out of clarity, we not only heal ourselves, we light the way for others. Justice doesn't always come in a courtroom. Sometimes it looks like a dinner table, a shared story, a name remembered with respect.